Victor Callahan was one of the most powerful men in Chicago. At 46, he had built an empire in real estate, controlling some of the most expensive properties in the city. His name carried weight in boardrooms, political circles, and high society gatherings. People envied his wealth, admired his intelligence, and feared his ruthlessness. Victor lived alone in a penthouse overlooking the Chicago skyline. He had no wife, no children, only money and power. He didn't believe in attachments. Emotions were weaknesses. His schedule was packed with business meetings, negotiations, and investment deals. Every decision he made was calculated, every move precise. He was like a machine, built to win. Interviews, television appearances, and magazine covers showcased his success, but no one truly knew him. No one got close. He was a fortress, untouchable, until the day his carefully built life started to crumble. When Victor returned from a business trip to London, he was greeted with unexpected news. His housekeeper of 10 years, Martha, handed in her resignation. "I'm sorry, Mr. Callahan," she said, standing nervously in his grand foyer. "My daughter is having her first child, and my husband wants us to move closer to family in Florida. It's time for me to be with them." Victor barely reacted. He had no patience for sentimental farewells. "I'll have my assistant find a replacement by tomorrow," he said, handing her a generous severance check. "Best of luck." Martha gave him a sad smile. "Money isn't everything, sir. One day, you'll see that." Victor dismissed her words. He didn't have time for meaningless conversations about family and love. He had a business empire to run. That night, he called his assistant. "Find me a new housekeeper," he instructed. "Unmarried, no kids, preferably someone plain and quiet. I don't want drama in my home." "Yes, Mr. Callahan," his assistant replied. "I'll handle it." The next day, Victor met the new housekeeper. She was a young woman in her mid-20s, dressed in a simple black dress and a grey cardigan. Her auburn hair was pulled into a low ponytail, and behind her thin-framed glasses were deep brown eyes that never quite met his. She looked fragile, almost invisible. "What's your name?" Victor asked. "Isla," she replied softly. "You'll be responsible for cleaning every morning, whether I'm home or not," he said. "I expect perfection. Dust, change the sheets every other day, and ensure everything is in its place. Before you leave, put on white socks and walk through the apartment. If they remain white, you've done your job. If not, clean the floors again." "Understood?" "Yes, sir." She was obedient, quiet, and efficient, exactly what he wanted, but something about her unsettled him. Days turned into weeks, and Victor noticed strange things. Papers on his desk were slightly moved, as if someone had touched them. His locked office door was sometimes ajar. Once, he found his safe slightly misaligned. Though nothing was missing, he told himself he was imagining things. Isla was harmless. She barely spoke, never asked questions, and never caused trouble, yet, something wasn't right. One evening, Victor returned home earlier than usual. As he stepped into his office, he froze. Isla was standing by his bookshelf, holding a file. She gasped and dropped it immediately. "What the hell are you doing?" His voice was sharp as a knife. I was just dusting, sir," she stammered. Victor's eyes narrowed. He strode forward, snatched the file, and scanned it. It was one of his confidential business reports. Something inside him stirred. "A quiet maid shouldn't be curious. I don't tolerate liars," he said coldly. "You have one chance to explain." Isla clenched her fists. Then, for the first time, she met his gaze head-on. "I know what you've done," she whispered. Victor's blood ran cold. "What did you say?" She took a deep breath. "I know about the offshore accounts. The illegal land deals. The bribes. Victor's pulse pounded. How did she know? Isla took a step closer. I didn't come here just to clean your house, Mr. Callahan. I came for the truth. And just like that, the world Victor had so carefully built started to collapse. Victor's grip tightened around the file. His mind raced, calculating possibilities. Isla was no ordinary maid, she was a threat. He took a slow, deliberate step forward, towering over her. You have 5 seconds to tell me exactly what you know. Isla didn't flinch. You think no one notices the way you operate, but I did. Offshore accounts, shell companies, backdoor deals. Your empire isn't as clean as the world believes. Victor's jaw clenched. This girl had stepped into dangerous territory. How did you get this information? He demanded. She hesitated, then said, You're not the only one who knows how to dig into secrets, Mr. Callahan. Her confidence sent a chill down his spine. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone like her. He needed to handle this carefully. Let's say you're right, he said, his voice dangerously calm. What exactly do you want? Isla's lips pressed together. I want justice. Victor let out a sharp laugh. Justice? Do you have any idea who you're up against? She didn't waver. Yes. A man who thinks he's untouchable. But even the mightiest empires fall. Victor studied her, his mind working fast. If she had real proof, she could be a problem. But something in her eyes told him she wasn't just here for money or blackmail. There was something deeper. I should have you thrown out right now, he said, voice laced with warning. You could. Isla tilted her head. But then you'd never know who else I told. Victor stilled. Clever girl. For the first time in years, he felt something other than cold control. He felt intrigued. Victor didn't become a billionaire by acting recklessly. If Isla knew something, he needed to find out how much. Over the next few days, he watched her closely. Cameras recorded her every move, and his security team ran background checks. What they found stunned him. Isla Monroe wasn't just a random housekeeper. She was the daughter of Daniel Monroe, the man Victor had ruined years ago, a man whose company he had crushed in a hostile takeover, a man who had lost everything, a man who had died in poverty. Victor stared at the report, his hands tightening into fists. Isla wasn't here by accident. She had planned this. The realization sent a wave of something unexpected through him, guilt. He shoved the feeling away. Emotions were weaknesses, and he couldn't afford them, but now, he understood. Isla wasn't after money. She was after revenge. Chapter 7. The unspoken truth. That night, Victor confronted her. You should have picked a different house to clean, Isla, he said, pouring himself a glass of whiskey. She stood in the doorway, unshaken. And you should have been a different man. He smirked. You think you can bring me down? No, she admitted. Not alone. But I'm not alone. Victor's grip tightened on the glass. You were careful, she continued, stepping forward. But not careful enough. Your name is on too many documents, too many accounts. Someone will talk. It's only a matter of time. Victor set his glass down, locking eyes with her. So, what now? A flicker of emotion crossed her face, something he couldn't quite place. I don't know, she admitted. I thought revenge would feel different. Victor exhaled. It never does. For the first time, silence stretched between them, not as enemies, but as two people tangled in a web of past choices. But the game wasn't over. Not yet. Just when Victor thought he had things under control, a new threat emerged. His company's internal files were leaked to the press. Headlines screamed of corruption, fraud, and illegal dealings. Victor Callahan was under investigation. The walls were closing in, and Isla, she wasn't the one who leaked the files. Someone else wanted him destroyed. someone on the inside, Victor had built an empire. But now, someone was tearing it apart from within, and the only person who might know the truth, the woman he had once thought was just a maid, Victor Callahan, sat in his dimly lit office, his mind a battlefield of strategy and paranoia. The headlines had been brutal: real estate kingpin under federal investigation. Callahan's empire built on lies? His company's stocks had plummeted overnight, and major investors were already pulling out. He had faced crises before, but this was different. This time, someone had gotten too close. Someone had planned this attack with precision, and Isla Monroe was still standing in his home. He leaned back, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Had she played him all along? Or was there another enemy lurking in the shadows? There was only one way to find out. Victor called Isla into his office that night. She stepped in cautiously, her brown eyes scanning him. She was expecting an accusation, maybe even an arrest. Instead, he did something she never saw coming. "I need your help." Her brows furrowed. "Excuse me?" Victor set his glass down and folded his hands on the desk. "Someone else leaked those files. Not you." Isla crossed her arms. "And why do you think that?" "Because if you wanted me ruined, you would have waited until I trusted you completely. This wasn't your plan." Isla's silence confirmed it. Victor leaned forward. "Whoever did this isn't just coming after me. They're going after my entire company. And you, whether you like it or not, are now caught in the crossfire." She hesitated, then asked, "And why should I help you?" Victor smirked. "Because if I fall, so do your chances of ever getting true justice for your father." The room was thick with tension. Then, slowly, Isla exhaled, "What do you need me to do?" Victor and Isla worked together in secrecy, tracing the leak back to its source. What they uncovered was more shocking than either expected. The traitor was Richard Hale, Victor's closest advisor. His right-hand man. The person he had trusted for over 15 years, Hale had been quietly shifting company assets, covering his tracks, and feeding the media scandalous details about Victor's past deals. His goal? To destroy Victor and take over his empire, and he had used Isla's presence as the perfect smokescreen. Victor's fury was ice cold. He had built his company from the ground up, and Hale had been poisoning it from within. Now, it was time to strike back. Victor arranged a private meeting with Hale at one of his unfinished properties, a luxury high-rise still under construction. Hale arrived, confident and smug. "Victor, you should have stepped down when you had the chance. Now, you're just embarrassing yourself." Victor chuckled darkly. "You always were ambitious, Richard. I just didn't know you were stupid too." Hale's smirk faltered. "Excuse me?" Victor stepped aside, revealing Isla. "She found you out," Victor said, his voice sharp. "She traced every missing dollar, every forged document. The feds don't have this evidence yet, but they will soon." Hale's face paled. For the first time, he looked afraid. "You wouldn't," he whispered. Victor leaned in, his voice deadly. "I would." Hale's hands trembled slightly. Then, in a desperate move, he pulled out a gun. Everything happened in a flash, Isla gasped. Victor lunged forward, a single gunshot echoed through the empty building, and Richard Hale collapsed, blood pooling beneath him. Victor stood over his former friend's body, breathing hard. He looked at Isla. "Are you okay?" She nodded, shaken. Hale had made his choice. And now, Victor had made his, but it wasn't over, not yet. With Hale gone, Victor had one final problem. The federal case against him was still open, and Isla still had the power to destroy him. One word from her, and he would spend the rest of his life in prison. Victor met her gaze. "What happens now?" Isla hesitated. "I should turn you in." He nodded. "You should." Silence. Then, she shook her head. But I won't. Victor frowned. Why? She swallowed hard. Because I've seen who you are behind the headlines. And you're not the same man who ruined my father. Victor exhaled. He wasn't sure what to say, for the first time in his life. Someone had seen him, the federal investigation was dropped, thanks to a secret deal Victor made, exposing other corrupt businessmen in return for his freedom. His company took a hit, but he still held control. As for Isla, she left. Victor watched from his penthouse window as she walked away, her presence lingering like a ghost. She had come for revenge, she had left with something more, and Victor, for the first time, he felt something he never had before, regret. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to change.
Please subscribe, like, comment and share this video. It means a lot to us. Thank you.